Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the IT Hour, Friday, August 18th. And I have to first say, this is my mom's birthday. And like I promised last week, I would say, Happy birthday, Mom. Sometimes my parents watch this, they may watch it later. So I had to make sure that I tell her. I will not say how old she is, but happy birthday, Mom. I'm Becky Scott. I'm your host. We have Urvashi. Say hello.
I'm Uvashi, the technical community champion. You must have seen me in all of the places trying to answer questions.
Yes, she's been everywhere, everything all at once.
All at once.
Yes. I forgot to mention I'm head of community. We have Dr. Scott Gerard from Knowledge Reactor and Dr. Joe Wilck from Bucknell University. We have the doctors. It's too bad Dr. Ken isn't with us. We would have all the doctors collect the whole set, but he might be in chat today. He's been on the IT Hour before. He's a friend of ours, and actually he knows both Scott and Joe. So maybe he will say hello in the chat at some point today. We are glad to have you both with us. We are going to be talking about ChatGPT, AI, all the AI things today. Very exciting topic. Everybody's already been chatting about it in the chat here. So, but first off, how's everybody doing today? You're on mute. Scott, Joe, how are you doing?
I'm good.
I'm doing well. As you can see from my bio, I'm from Bucknell, and our classes start Monday. But I've been helping with the new student orientation and that sort of thing this week. So back to the classroom on Monday. Looking forward to it.
Oh, great. Any fun plans this weekend before you have to drop into classes?
So I live 30 minutes south of the Little League World Series locale. So I'd like to go up there, but I think we're actually going to have some family come visit. They have a new child, so we're going to get to meet the new baby. Looking forward to that.
Wonderful. And Scott, you said you were at NC State today. Anything fun going on there?
Yeah, there's a Riot Developer Days. This is the Raleigh IoT group here, and they have this developer day. So I'm out here learning more about stuff and meeting people. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, and I forgot to mention that Scott is a former IBM data scientist. So he's got a lot of really cool things that he has done before. So we are going to have a lot of fun talking. Charles says in the chat, there's a riot.
I was just going to say for a split second, I was like, are you okay? Is everything okay?
He's squared away in a room. Oh, see, there's Ken in the chat. What a great group today. Oh, and I forgot, tomorrow is Ken's birthday. So happy birthday a day early, Ken. So yeah. All right, we got lots of August birthdays, lots of Leos going on. As usual, we have our agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about community, and then we've got some great product updates, and then we will jump into AI and chat and all the machine learning things. So let me pull up the list. We have a couple of scripts, which as usual, we will put the links to all these in the show notes after the fact, but Jürgen has written a really cool PowerShell command results reporting script to consume command results in various ways. You can check that out. And then Sean has done a patch dashboard part 2. He already did part 1. And this one is about taking actions. So make sure you check those out. And Sergey has written about Android EMM, because if you remember, we have been talking about fully managed and dedicated device enrollment. It is now here. It is GA. So general availability of fully managed and dedicated Android devices in Jump Cloud. This enables IT admins and MSPs to securely select, deploy, and manage Android devices and services throughout their environment. It's going to increase visibility, security, and control on a wide range of Android COD, which is corporate owned, and BYOD devices, provides a flexible policy management approach that takes into account the critical need to secure corporate data while respecting employees' personal privacy. Now, take note of this. To align with the 2 newly supported enrollment types, we have modified several of the existing restrictions policies to include fully managed and dedicated device features, as well as we've added net new policies. A few policies of note are kiosk mode, system update, and factory reset protection. Urvashi, if you would grab the link to the community post to put in chat so everyone can see that. That is the post that Sergey put on the community. We are actually have him scheduled toward the end of September to come and do a demo here on the IT Hour about that. He has been on here before. He's great. And we are looking forward to having him here to do a lot more in detail about what's going on there. What's really cool about that is there's kind of like a split view on personal devices where you can have work mode and personal mode. So it's gonna be really cool to get to see some of that. And really, that was it. So we are gonna jump right into the AI topic because there's lots of stuff to talk about, and we've already got bunches of things going on in the chat. We were going to start out with Joe kind of giving us a little bit of a brief history of the world of Chat GPT. So, Joe, do you want to maybe before we actually get started on history of chat and things like that, do you want to maybe tell us how you kind of got into some of this stuff?
Sure, thank you. So I got into it because, and he's actually just across the way from me here, one of my colleagues in accounting, his name is Daniel Street. He dove into it pretty much headfirst because he was very interested in how this was going to interact with the accounting profession. And so he and I talked a lot about it, and then it led to just doing some work in the area and exploring. ChatGPT, to kind of give it a little bit of a hierarchy, if you will, there's the generative AI kind of category where you're trying to generate either text or an image or something. And so large language models would fall under that umbrella of generative AI. And that's what ChatGPT is. ChatGPT is a large language model. So it's built upon a lot of corpus, if you will, a lot of different types of text. And this has been ongoing for years. Okay, so this isn't something that OpenAI just opened it up in 2022 and said, let's go. There's been a number of different iterations, and it's been built over a number of years. But in November of 2022, it was finally kind of unleashed, if you will. And the corpus includes a lot of things that you would find reliable, such as Wikipedia. It's primarily reliable. And also things that you would consider classic, such as, say, the works of Shakespeare, maybe the works of Dickens and stuff like that. But it also includes a common crawl of the internet and some other types of websites or publications that may or may not have been edited or vetted. But that's okay because, again, it's trying to build a model that is predictive of language that can have a conversation with you. It's not necessarily trying to build a truth model, as Scott would say. I'm stealing his thunder here a little bit. So it's a language model. Now, OpenAI was founded years ago as a nonprofit, but it has slowly become a restricted for-profit organization, and there's been different people involved, some major names. I won't go into details there. But Microsoft has obviously been a primary investor of OpenAI since ChatGPT's release. And now Microsoft, through Bing Chat, has capabilities that are similar to ChatGPT. In March, ChatGPT started offering a pro version or a paid version. I believe it's approximately $20 a month. Once you add taxes, maybe a little bit more. And that comes with plugins now, and it comes with a little less restrictions. It's still somewhat restricted, but a little less restrictions. And it's being updated to include some additional features. In fact, just recently, some of the features that are now included in the Pro version include the ability to upload files, and then you can ask ChatGPT to do something with those files, such as You could give it spreadsheets of data, and then you could ask ChatGPT to do something with the data. Also, these plugins now allow you to have some built-in prompt engineering, and maybe we can talk more about that if the conversation goes there. But a lot has happened in the last 9 months, and obviously we're seeing additional competitors come to the market. So I've already mentioned Bing Chat, Google's Bard is coming to the market, and I'm sure there's going to be others to follow as well.
That's really great. Scott, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to say that I got interested in natural language processing about 10 years ago. I was part of the Watson commercialization team. But when ChatGPT came out, I was kind of on the upswing with everybody else. It's like, what's this new thing? Let's go explore it a little bit. But so that's how I got into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting how it seems like this great new thing, but really it's been around quite a bit. It's not really as new as we all think it is. Let's jump into. Do you want to talk more about the difference between the free and the paid version, Joe?
I can a little bit here. So the other thing to keep in mind about the difference between the free and the paid version is there's constant change. Okay, so what was true in January was very different in March, which was very different, say now in August. So the free version, you are restricted to the capacity. So there's definitely, if it's high use time, there were long lag times. And also, some users experience, like if they asked it a particularly hard question or something where they were looking for a long response, the response would just kind of stop. Okay, it would like shut itself off. The paid version is supposedly a little bit better at that, and it also allows you to get to the front of the line for the free version. So if you log in, the paid version, you're restricted to a certain number of questions that you can ask in a 3-hour time period. It's gone up from 25 questions to 50, but under the paid version, you are allowed to be at the front of the line for the unlimited version, if you will. In terms of its effectiveness, and this is, I won't bore you with all the numbers, but I've been testing it because I'm a faculty member. I've been testing it using some of my test questions and stuff like that. And I teach primarily, analytics and engineering type topics. The 4 version, the ChatGPT 4, which is the paid version, it is superior to the 3 version or the unpaid version. So much so that you're going from like a failing student, if you will, to a C student. And so that's actually a very big improvement in just a matter of months, in my opinion.
Very interesting. I'm noticing that, Keith had said in the chat that they use ChatGPT for writing copy and taking a first pass at errors in code. But it's not a tool that can be in charge from start to finish in their processes. And let's see, Brett had said that it's helped him progress a bit in the skills and maybe usefulness curve. There are scripts that he can describe but don't yet know how to code. So, people are using this for work, and that's really what we're here to kind of talk about is how they can use this to either get started in something, to up-level their skills, to kind of help supplement what they're doing. Brandon is saying here that ChatGPT 4 is really good. We put out an Azure bot recently, and it has been much better. So let's talk a little bit about how useful this can be from a work environment standpoint. We're talking to IT admins, and so there's potential here for either scripting or automation or up-leveling skills like Brett said. So what can you and Scott talk about there?
I think there's a lot of possibilities. I think one of the best sets of use cases is kind of creative content You know, if you were doing marketing or sales or something like that, that's kind of a clearly obvious thing. But there's a lot of other places where, you ask ChatGPT, give me 10 things to consider about this topic, and it spits out 10. Um, I, I want to say that I think this is an awesomely cool technology, but we shouldn't lose track of its downsides. It's often called hallucinations, is kind of the obvious one. And I think you guys need to be aware of that. But if you're taking these 10 ideas and saying, I like these 5, but I don't like these 5, you're already using your own intellect and your own understanding of your situation to say, these are really good things that I want to carry forward, but these other things I'm just going to drop by the side. I think that's a really important thing to do. And, because it does hallucinate. The numbers that I've seen is it's accurate, between 80 and 85% of the time, which means it's wrong 15 to 20%. I don't know, Joe, if you've got some other numbers like that, but, it does hallucinate, guys. And in my opinion, you're accountable for what you put your name on. And it doesn't matter whether ChatGPT did it or your friend next door. You have to take accountability for what you're doing.
Yeah, I do want to dig into that in just a second. I first want to talk about how it can help, and then I do want to dig into more about what that means about its inaccuracies. But where else can we find ways to apply it to things?
So I have a few to add here. I think where you can actually use it to help is in a number of ways. You can use it to help you with, I would say, creative tasks, but you need to ask it specific questions, and you need to vet its answer very quickly. So, for example, let's say you're drafting an email. You could say, please draft me an email. Here are the 3 points I want you to cover. Okay. So you've given it a direct, this is what I want you to do. And you've given it 3 things you want it to focus on. And so then it puts it together for you. And then now you have to go in and be the editor. You could also ask it to provide an outline for, say, some kind of report that you're going to write. But you obviously don't ask it to write the entire report. You could ask it to do the outline. The other thing that I think I've seen a lot here in the questions is folks are using it for code or for regular expressions or something like that. And again, I find those to be actually very creative tasks. I realize you have to have a technical knowledge to do them, but I find them you still have to have a level of creativity to it. But you're probably doing a very good job of asking a very specific question. You're saying, here's what my data element looks like. Please write some code that will do X, Y, or Z. So you're already kind of asking the very specific question and giving it some input so that it knows kind of how to frame it. And again, to kind of reiterate what Scott said, and I guess we're alluding to this, it does make mistakes. But if, in my opinion, if you ask it to do a small enough task that's very specific, you as the human are going to be able to quickly identify, oh, it did not interpret this correctly, or got close but not quite.
I'm noticing that we were talking a little bit in the chat about prompt engineers. Joe, I think when we were having a conversation the other day, you actually said that be careful about that because that it's actually starting to do its own prompts. So do you want to dig into that for a moment before we then move on to the hallucinations?
Yes, thank you. So the paid version of ChatGPT, the ChatGPT 4, there's actually a plugin that allows you to have it give you suggested prompts. So once you're into a conversation, it will give you suggested prompts on how to continue the conversation. And as an aside to that, it will also allow you to define a persona up front with the conversation. And what I mean by a persona is you could say something along the lines of, I'll pick on my kids. I'm a 4th grade teacher. I would like to prepare questions about the solar system. Okay. And so now it knows, okay, I need to come up with fourth grade content. So you've given it a persona. Or you could ask it another, you could give it another persona. You could say, I am the manager and I need to write an email about a performance improvement plan. And then it can then provide some content there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken saying personas and brands in the chat. So yeah, you can do it with your brand as well. So that's interesting that you can do that with a plugin, so you can get very specific about what types of things you're trying to get the output. So, and that's going to be refined over time to where these prompts are going to be even more specific. So you won't have to be a prompt engineer to be able to get it to give you the results you want.
Right.
So there are other ways you can use chat in an AI in your job. I'm going to pivot just briefly before we return back to the hallucination thing. If you are looking for a job, it's a tough world out there right now. There's been a lot of layoffs in tech. Um, let's talk about job searches. There's a really, really good way to use chat and AI in a job search. So let's talk about that.
Well, you can have it generate your resume. You can give it information about the skills that you have, and say, I am a system administrator. Please write me a resume giving these kind of facts, and it will generate that. It will often generate it with some interesting points that you may not have thought about including, which is great. It also will often do a really good job of the English, the right tone. You might want to play around with the tone a little bit, but you can kind of get it to do a number of things that way. And in fact, even if you're a manager, you could have it summarize resumes that you're getting and saying, summarize this person's resume for me, summarize that person's resume. And it's just one way to kind of help you focus down more quickly on the set of people that you're interested in looking for.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I actually just had a conversation with a human resources professional, and they were indicating that it's their understanding that there's a lot of black boxes out there for human resources professionals are using in job recruitment, and ChatGPT, while it's not the same black box, you could use it to review your resume or to review your cover letter, and maybe give you, like Scott said, some pointers. An ancillary topic to that, my students and I, before it became enormously expensive to do this, we were using ChatGPT for analysis of text, whether it was like a positive text, negative text, or neutral. So this is called sentiment analysis. But we were doing it on like a data set of like hundreds of thousands of messages at the same time. But then it became very expensive to do that because it turned off our ability to automate.
The other thing you can do is you can take your current resume, you can plug that in, and then you can plug in a specific job you are looking at and tell it to rewrite your resume targeting that job. Because a lot of times you want to tweak your resume for a specific job. You can also plug in your resume and a job description and ask it to write you a cover letter. But always, always proofread it, edit it, tweak it a little bit to suit your situation. But it gives you a jumping off point to figure out, oh, does this fit me? Does this fit my voice? Does it fit my personality? But it can give you some good ways of tweaking your stuff. Keith asks, are there any plugins to find me all jobs that pay above median?
I have a quick question actually about the sentiment analysis. When you're writing a resume, you keep hearing from people that it has to sound assertive and it has to show leadership and things like that. And we've seen sentiment analysis being, positive, neutral, negative in a bunch of different tools. But do you see a future where, when it's reviewing your resume, it could indicate that it doesn't sound, like it's assertive and strong and things like that, like broadening that horizon of sentiment analysis?
So my answer to that would be, give it your resume and then, or cover letter, and then ask it the question, is this resume, is it showing leadership or is it showing assertiveness? So just ask it the question directly. And obviously you have to prompt it by saying, I'm looking for a job and here's my resume, here's the job description, etc. But sentiment analysis, from a technical standpoint, unfortunately, right now, it's very much classifying something as either yes, no, and even the maybe category or the intermediate category is still very difficult because a lot of classification models are designed to only do binary, yes or no. So it's very difficult once you start adding different categories to it.
And Josh says, utilizing the multiple thread / conversations. Oops, it just scrolled up. I got to go scroll back down. Lets you build out multiple tools so you can build one of the conversations to write in your own style. One to use improve prompts, another that is set up for technical writing code, etc. Saves time rebuilding the context each time. Yeah. Yeah. When you're able to save it and then just add to it each time, it really does help with that. Feed it the job posting in your resume, ask it to write a cover letter, update your resume for the position utilizing as many keywords from the posting as possible. Yes, it really does. It really does help that. Josh. Remember, she says, career coach Josh. Josh uses this a
Or
lot.
you could
Good
pay
job.
$20 to Josh instead of ChatGPT and have him help you.
There you go. Absolutely. Although Charles says automated tools to write a resume that just gets ingested by another automated tool. I like this. 13 plugins related to job search. So, all right. Any other ways we can think of that people can use AI in their jobs? We've got scripts, we've got job search, we've got.
I have one more to add. So for me, I have to do some administrative stuff, whether it's drafting emails or sending professional thank you notes, that sort of thing. And I'll be quite honest, I'm a numbers guy. I'm not a word guy. And so I will give it an example and say, here's an example of a quick thank you note. Please generate 4 more. And because I want it to sound like me, right? But I don't, it actually takes a lot of time for me to think of like a way to say something that doesn't exactly say the same thing so that I'm not sending the same thing 5 times. So I use it for some creative administrative type tasks.
I was going to say there's a bunch of things you can use it for like even just writing reports, and there's a lot of variations of this. You can say, write me a cool title for this report. You can say, write me an outline for this report. You could say, write me the executive summary now that I've written the report, so summarize that. Writing the executive summaries is always a challenge that I faced. There's just a lot of variations for, help me write a report that you can use. And that's probably something a lot of you have to do from time to time.
Yeah, but let's also throw in a caveat of being careful about what type of information you put in something like this, because a lot of companies do not want you to put any company confidential information in there. So unless you are running it on a machine where you are running it away from the internet, it's like on a self-sufficient machine or something like that, like you have your own version of it, then you need to be careful about those things. But I
Yeah.
did think of one more way would be if you're if you're in an planning on being in an interview. I think we had talked about this earlier this week, Joe, and I forgot to mention it was interview questions.
Mhm.
Like, give me some sample interview questions. If you're getting ready to interview, like, here's the job description. Give me some sample interview questions that I might get for this job. Or if you're a hiring manager, give me some sample interview questions for a junior IT admin or a junior system administrator that I could use to interview a person. So
Right.
those are some things that you could use it for.
Yeah, and I would like to add as someone who teaches, and I will admit I have used it to generate questions. I had to ask it for like 10 questions to get one or two useful. So just bear that in mind. If you're going to ask it for interview questions, it's going to give you a lot of fluff.
Yeah, true. Sonia's saying that they use it all the time as a tutor, type specific questions about whatever software I'm using to learn more about how it integrates with other softwares, et cetera. Very helpful for DevOps tools and learning security software. So that's a really good point. And Nathan is saying new version of GoodNotes app uses AI to spell check your handwritten notes and then will make corrections, attempting to match the look of your handwriting. That is cool. I use GoodNotes all the time for making notes on PDFs because I can just handwrite my notes on the side of it without having to use something else and then type in it. It's really easy. So that works really well. Charles, compose an email to my manager that says I won't be coming in on Saturday without cursing or referring to him as an idiot. Yeah. Dear ChatGPT, please help me write a letter that doesn't get me fired.
Well,
Yeah.
you laugh about that. So I mentioned earlier I worked with my accounting colleague. That is actually one of the things that we tested. We tested because a lot of times accounting professionals work with clients, but they have to rely on the client to provide timely data so that they can do the proper analysis. And so it's like, here's what I really want to say. Please write this in a professional tone manner. And it actually does a very good job. But you might not need to give it the swear words though. You can just give it the bullet points.
And it looks like Tad used it to ask college admissions to shave off cost because the daughter was having a tough time between two colleges, save $2K a year. So there you
All right.
go. That would maybe save you enough money to justify the paid version. May or may not use it to write my performance review comments. I wish I had thought of that because we just
Mm.
literally went through doing our own self assessments for performance reviews, Josh. So now you tell me. Thanks a lot.
And I'm here to hear it. So, Becky, when those performance reviews for me come out, I'm going to have to put some prompts into ChatGPT to see if you got it from there.
Yeah, next time, huh? Too late because I did them by hand this time, but no promises next time. And Ken says he's part of a songwriters group, and we ask it to create a lyric in the style of blank, and it did an okay job, surprisingly. But what are the IP issues if we have AI emulate a known artist? That's a good point. I've got some things in the IT news section talking about that exact thing because there are a lot of lawsuits right now around various IP holders suing OpenAI and others. Sarah Silverman is one of them because of her books, and there are
Mhm.
quite a few authors who are suing because their copyrighted works were fed into these large language models to help train it, and they weren't asked, they weren't compensated in any way. So that's a hot topic right now.
Yeah, the SAG and the WAG groups from Hollywood are suing OpenAI over this. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think it may take a year or more for that to happen, but yeah, all of those copyright things, they could blow up at some point. Nobody knows.
Well,
Right.
that's
And
That's why they're on strike right now too, is because of the contracts in Hollywood for whether or not they will use AI to generate scripts, and they would possibly get paid less because of AI. So that is literally exactly why they're on strike at the moment.
and the other thing that I've seen, and I wish I would have remembered the name of the author. There's actually an Amazon author. So she publishes exclusively on Amazon. You know, the self-publishing type thing with Amazon. and someone was probably using ChatGPT to write books under her name
Oh, I saw
and
that too.
selling them on the platform. So she's basically saying someone is, has stolen my identity, and it's and they are very likely, considering a quantity of books that are being sold, wrote them using some kind of large language model and are profiting off of someone's name. So it's what's really weird is, and I'm getting into the math here, but there's like the type 1 error and now also the type 2 error, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, this is insane.
Yeah, and I saw that too, Joe, and she couldn't get Goodreads to take them off of her list of attributed books. So people were most likely buying those just because it had her name on it. And she couldn't get them to disassociate those books from her on Goodreads. And then on Amazon, she was trying to get them to take them down. And it was just a really frustrating situation for her. And she was a pretty prolific writer as it was. So,
Right.
yeah,
If
this can become a nightmare for writers.
if you want to take this kind of to an extreme, there was an episode of Black Mirror called Joan is Awful. It's a weird situation, but it's very much with this AI. And there are extras in the movie industry that they have to sign away that, the company can use their image and their likeness for as many things as they want for as long as they want into the future without any extra compensation. So this Joan is Awful episode is not completely there are parallels with today's stuff.
Yeah, and the most recent Indiana Jones, they used old footage of Harrison Ford to, show him as a young man in the film, from what I understand. I haven't actually seen it, but I've seen like short little clips. So was he compensated for that or not? I don't really know, but that's the worry of actors, from what I've read, is the residuals, because that's how some actors make their money long term, is not just the doing, being in the film and getting paid for it, but every time an episode or a movie is replayed on TV, those residual monies is where they continue to earn from that. And they've been saying that the residual checks have been shrinking over, the last few decades, just shrinking a lot. Like they'll get pennies instead of hundreds of dollars like they used to. So this is a really big deal if the studios can use their likeness in perpetuity, but the studios get paid for it, but the actors don't. That's a problem. And Urvashi has a background in acting, so I know she's like, hey, wait a minute. I can see it on
It's
her
not
face.
even it's not even just the studios, right? It's like the streaming platform takes a cut, the studio takes a cut, and by the time it actually gets even to the filmmaker, like maybe even the director who's like top of the chain, it's like in cents. And so for it to get to an actor or to anybody that's below like producer, director itself is, and that's like not even counting AI likenesses. It's just like base level. That's where it is now, and it's probably going to get worse.
Yeah, it's pennies or half pennies by the time it gets to them. So it's kind of ridiculous.
There was also that other Black Mirror episode from a previous season where they rebuilt a likeness of someone who had died, using like their Twitter account and like videos of them to like simulate that person being alive. And I've been seeing these videos where they're using AI to like restore a photo of somebody that you've lost and like have them smile or blink, and it's dangerous territory.
Absolutely. That's very scary. Um Keith says, drop this question into the paid OpenAI. Could you tell me great things to do at work on a Friday? I work in IT. It gave me a detailed list of 10 things I could do. Oh, cool. Are they good things or interesting things or not, Keith? I don't know if that's like an actual good things you could do or
Is it
not.
something your manager wants you to do?
Yeah, and Urvashi wants to know, are we on the list? Is the IT hour on the list? I mean, it should be,
Should I go
right?
in and start training it to like always include the Jump Cloud idea, or just spend hours this weekend training it?
Oh,
Looks like
whoa.
you
It
put
just,
in
Oh,
he just
something.
put it in there. That went too long for me to read it right this very moment. All right. So now that we've gone through all of these really cool and interesting things, we've talked a little bit about hallucinations. What is an hallucination, and why should we be worried about what AI is smoking?
It's where it makes up stuff, and it's one thing to say it's lying, but lying kind of has uh, a suggestion that it's intentionally lying, whereas hallucinations are not intentional, but it does make up stuff. And the thing that's kind of surprising is that it does it with such confidence. It will lie to your, I'm sorry, it will hallucinate to your face and with such confidence. And I think a lot of us are used to saying, if a computer says it, it must be true, but it isn't. That's the real core problem with it. And people will talk about, well, we need to put guardrails in, right? We need to put guardrails in to prevent, toxic speech, or, don't tell them how to build an atomic bomb or that kind of stuff. But since we don't really know how it works, we don't know how to get rid of all the hallucinations. There are guardrails that help, but at this point, I'm not aware of anything that will prevent all hallucinations. So everything that we do, there is a possibility of hallucinations.
Yeah. Yeah, I would add to that.
yay.
Oh, I don't. Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I would add to that the other scary thing about the hallucinations, particularly if you're asking it for something that's either a fact or that's a factual type of a question, is it sometimes will give you an answer that's very close to the right answer. So, like if you ask it a quantitative type question, it may give you the right formula, but give you the wrong final answer. And so, and even simple multiplication, it will make mistakes. And so, what's scary is the answer could look close to being correct, and you just automatically assume, oh, it must be right, but it's not. And then there are obviously cases where it hallucinates and it's just completely wrong. It's so obvious it's wrong. But those are easier to spot.
So it doesn't follow, what is it, PEMDAS or whatever it is for for math equations. Oh, tell them, in case they haven't seen it, tell them about the court case when it comes to hallucinations.
This was a court. There's some guy that's on Avianca Airlines. He must have been sitting in the aisle and had his knee out, and the stewardess apparently whacked his knee with the metal cart. So he decides to sue Avianca Airlines. Fine, we don't need to talk about that. But so he gets this lawyer, Stephen Schwartz, and says, you need to submit a brief to the court on our case. Well, he goes out to ChatGPT and says, generate me this brief, and it comes back with all this text, and it includes over a half a dozen citations of other legal cases, right? And so he submits it to the court. There's only one problem. Neither the judge nor the opposing counsel can find any of these other cases that it cited. What it did is it generated citations that looked real. They had the right structure, they had the right format, but they just didn't happen to exist. And Stephen Schwartz, he and his firm were brought before the judge in June to try to explain themselves, which was basically they just repeated over and over again, apparently, some flavor of, gee, I guess we're stupid. We didn't really know that ChatGPT could lie to us, blah, blah, blah. I haven't heard the results of that case yet, but they are in deep yogurt, and you do not want to be another Stephen Schwartz. That's why you need to read through everything that you get from ChatGPT and make sure that you agree with it. Don't just take his word for it. But that's a cool case of, maybe your purpose in life is to be a warning to others. Don't be that guy.
I will add to that though. So Microsoft has the Bing chat, Bing chat, and it's built off the same corpus and the same technology as ChatGPT. But the benefit is that Bing chat also has the ability to search the internet, and so you could, with correct prompting, you could ask Bing chat to do the same task, but also to provide links to the references. And it may or may not do it very well, but that could have been a cautionary, like they could have solved their problem had they gone the Bing chat route instead of the Chat GPT route, perhaps.
Maybe, yeah. And I just read that Microsoft is now, in addition to working with Open AI, they're also partnering now with Databricks for additional AI stuff. Yeah, and then so let's talk about there's Bing Chat, there's Google Bard, there's what are some of the others that are like open and available right now for people to experiment with?
So, and I'm sure I'm going to miss one, but the three big ones are the ones you just mentioned: the Chat GPT, Bing Chat, and Google's Bard. There are another number of companies and organizations out there that are building large language models, but their focus is primarily on the B2B sector. So they're going to try to sell their modeling technology to a company and say, "Hey, let's go in and build a model for your company." So that I wouldn't consider that publicly available for individual users.
Gotcha.
But there are some open source ones. Falcon came out. That's a nice open source model that you can download to your own machine. Llama 2 from Meta is also an open source thing. And there's also one out on Hugging Face. I haven't tried these myself yet, but I think that's really interesting. Because it kind of gets to this other failure mode, Becky, which it's not just that they hallucinate, but if you go to Open AI and give it some data, they make no promises that they won't use it for training or whatever else. And if you're doing, writing an email to your friends or your boss, it may not be a big deal. But if you have confidential information, you need to be concerned about data leakage. And even if you trust OpenAI not to use it, if you are using personal health information, you can't do that. You have to be certain that it is going to be safe. If you're doing legal stuff, right, you have to make sure that you maintain confidentiality. Absolutely. So this whole data leakage thing is another kind of a failure mode that you need to be thinking about, which is why you might want to use some of these open source language models, because then you know that everything is contained within your own walls. But
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what Charles was talking about, the LLMs that you can run on a local laptop where then you've got it self-contained.
right.
We also had an episode of the IT Hour with Joel from Jump Cloud Labs, and he was saying that one of the biggest dangers is potentially exposing personally identifiable information to any like machine learning system. And that was one of the big reasons he was like, we're not even close to being able to use that safely.
Yeah. Keith is saying, I've talked with some people in my network where they have built their own LLM by feeding in 300 product manuals. Now they can quickly build out the framework of each new product they release. That's really interesting. So Keith, what model did they use? Hugging Face? Oh, he'll have to ask. And there is a question from much earlier in the show that I had saved, but I forgot to. I was going to wait till we had a chance to answer it. In the future, how much do you predict the impact of AI on the use of advanced technology? The scope of work of the AI system has a system to support safe work to what extent? What do you think?
Well, large language models are an advanced technology, so right away it's helping that, of course. But I think the these models will be integrated into all kinds of other things, and people are already doing that. If you're interested in playing with these kinds of things, there's a Python framework called LangChain, where you can chain together various steps. Some of them are, calling out to a large language model. Some of them may be doing Zapier zaps or, whatever else you want to do. But I think there's just going to be a blur and a blend of all of these technologies.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that an example of how they could be integrated. Right now, when I text people with my phone, it'll give me a suggested, it thinks ahead. It gives me a suggested word, maybe one word at a time. If I use Google email, it'll actually maybe think 2 or 3 words at a time. Well, just imagine, a year from now when you have some kind of ChatGPT feature built into Microsoft Word and it's recommending a paragraph at a time. And it's already in the right format and everything else. So I think that's kind of where we're going. It's going to be able to predict kind of the end of your sentence. So that sort of thing.
That's true. I
And yeah,
mean,
there's already technologies out there that are already doing that. Yes.
yeah, like Google search. I mean, you start typing and it'll give you multiple suggestions of what you're searching for. And Gmail will autocomplete my sentences based on all the emails I've already composed. Basically, it does that a lot, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty close to what I was gonna say. Sometimes I'll let it do it, and I'm like, yeah, that's close enough. I mean, it's close enough to what I was gonna say. I'll take it, or I'll be like, nah, I'd rather use different words. So it's pretty good already.
I feel like people are always like so quick to complain. They're like, oh, my data is being used and I'm being targeted. But honestly, Instagram ads knows me so well and like recommends the best things to me. I'm like, take my information. Give me that product that I don't necessarily need, but definitely want. Complete my sentences. I'm ready to lean in.
I'm kind of halfway there on, like, sometimes Facebook does okay, and other times it's like products, not so much, but it gives me movies and TV ads for like stuff to watch on like Netflix and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like, show me the movies and the TV stuff, but the product ads, no, I don't need junk. I don't need more stuff. I've got too much of that already. Show me how to like declutter and get rid of. Show me those. Maybe now that I've said it, I'll get ads for that.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, and this is an open thought in my mind, but I tend to share some of my accounts with my wife, and I get weird ads that are not appropriate for either her nor myself. And I think it's because we've confused the algorithm because there's 2 of us and we have kids. And so you were mentioning that your Instagram knows you very well, but there was a time in my life when the only advertisements I was getting were for Barbies and Disney movies. And I was like, I'm a grown man. What is going on here?
Hey, now, grown men can enjoy Barbies. So just
True,
saying.
I should have picked a different example, but I think you understand where I'm going with
Yeah.
this.
Hey, it's good. You're confusing it. That can have benefits. Could definitely have benefits.
Yeah, as soon as
So-
I got into my 30s, it was recommending like baby stuff to me, and I'm like, I do not have a child.
So Samuel is asking, has anyone had success using generative AI to create / test PowerShell, Z shell scripts? If so, what tools are you using? So some people are starting to answer that in the chat. Brett is saying ChatGPT and Visual Code Copilot. ChatGPT.
Josh has mentioned something too. Yeah.
Yeah, ChatGPT 4 model and ask it to create a script. So I'll let y'all read through those because those are getting kind of long. But I think there's some good information. And Charles is asking if anyone has used Rewind AI. The things you say now may not be acceptable in the future. Tad's saying,
Yeah. What I wanted to mention is there's yet another failure mode that most people probably don't know. It's called prompt injection. And particularly if you're using a piece of software that you don't understand and it's not from, Bing or OpenAI or Bard or whatever, they can put in pieces of code that will rewrite your prompt. And I saw this guy saying, tell me about the good things for democracy. And if you just give it that, it gives you a nice answer and, makes us all feel good. But he also then put in some things where it said, take the opposite point of view of the following question, and then it puts your prompt in. So it actually comes back and gives a rather negative view of democracy. And if you don't know that it's changing your prompts, that could be really bad. And maybe it's even stealing some of your prompts. So even whether the LLM is stealing your code or not, these prompt injectors could be doing that.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
And I'm not trying to be negative on ChatGPT, guys. I think it's a cool technology, but you got to understand the failure modes.
Yeah, there are caveats to everything like that. You just have to know and be aware. And let's talk a little bit about that in the news, because I'm crossing out IT news today because we are focusing on AI news. So there's a report in Ars Technica that the New York Times is potentially going to force OpenAI to wipe ChatGPT from any New York Times content, because they feel that OpenAI used a lot of New York Times content to feed its large language model, and they are afraid that ChatGPT is going to become a competitor of theirs. So OpenAI may try to claim fair use, but if people start prompting it to, let's say, summarize the news, or it asks questions and they get responses from it instead of the New York Times, that it's going to become a large competitor using their own information. So they're talking about making it wipe all of their information and start over. So that could really hurt them. And in fact, they were talking about wanting fines up to $150,000 per infringing piece of content, which, I mean, that could potentially wipe them out completely, right? So not so great situation. And then in another kind of almost humorous oops, Microsoft had a travel article about Ottawa, where in Ottawa you will find some beautiful attractions that you cannot miss. And it put a travel article about Ottawa that prominently recommended that tourists visit the Ottawa Food Bank. They pulled it, of course, but not before people had seen it and saved it and went like, I don't think that's quite what, as a tourist attraction, literally telling tourists
visit to donate,
no,
or
no, just like
it's
go,
a restaurant.
Like, yeah, go hungry.
Well,
Make
but
sure you go hungry when you're going to visit.
Did they create?
Cringe.
So you're suggesting they created that with AI, though, right? Not necessarily ChatGPT.
Yeah, just an AI created article. So it just said AI written.
I've seen something similar to that. A college I used to work at several years ago, the students, as a gag, they went to Yelp and they upvoted the dining hall as the best date night experience in this city. And so people from out of town visiting tourists would call the dining hall to make reservations because they were only using Yelp. So sometimes you can game the system, and I kind of wonder if this is what happened. Maybe some college kids, let's say, pranking made the food bank like the #1 date night.
From what I understand, it was just a Microsoft travel article, and it was AI generated travel article, and they actually pulled it. And it was either, and of course, Microsoft in 2020 laid off a bunch of journalists at Microsoft
Mhm.
News and MSN and replaced them with AI. So there you go. And in a couple of slightly more positive things, there's this company called Unbabel that has unveiled an AI project to communicate using thought alone. And the reason I thought this was interesting, and I don't know if Ken is still on here, but he's working on a project using BrainCo, which is where they're using these he was actually on talking about it, where he showed the device where they're using like brain a device you put on and uses your brain waves to help you learn to calm yourself and everything. And this one is helping people learn to like use your thoughts to communicate to something that then texts your thoughts. We'll post a link to this because it was really interesting. The example they used was someone asked what type of coffee they had had when they came in, and the person thought about it, and then the device actually texted the answer through using their brainwaves and how they've got it set up. And it was just a really cool. It's like when we're talking about using AI for stuff like this, it's like, yeah, this is the type of cool stuff I want to see AI doing. So that's
Forget,
really neat.
forget prompt engineering. This is thought engineering.
Yeah, yeah. And then Opera's AI browser assistant is now available in its iOS app. So if you use Opera, their area AI assistant has made its way into iOS, and you can now download that and use that if you are using Opera. So all those links will be in our show notes in the IT Hour group on the community. Urvashi always posts those and gives all the links to those. But we are right at time. You guys, thank you for joining us. This was great. Lots of really cool comments in the chat, lots of really great questions and discussion. Hey, as this progresses, if there's more really cool stuff to talk about, we would love to have you back. It was a great conversation. Thanks for joining us. Happy birthday again, Mom, if you're watching this, and happy birthday tomorrow, Ken. I hope you all
Happy
have.
birthday, Becky's mom.
Thank you. I hope you all have a great weekend, and we hope to see everyone again soon, and see you next week. Take care,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye, guys.